Yes, of course, I don't think you're going to find anyone disagreeing with repealing the so-called Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, or by any other name. However, there were certain problems that we had back before this was passed, and those problems still exist today, and it mainly comes down to cost. Why is it so expensive? I remember when I was a kid and I went to get my ear cleaned, and my parents were able to pay for it out of pocket. Then later on, I tried to get a doctor to clean my ear, and they're like, oh, first you have to get an eye, nose, and throat inspection. Oh, why is that? Well, that's part of the insurance deal. So we have a bureaucracy running the entire system. Furthermore, just recently, I wanted to go to the doctor, and I wanted to find out how much an office visit was. I call up. They said, oh, you got to call the insurance company. I got on the phone with the insurance company. I'm put on hold forever. I mean, you can kind of fill in the rest. I had to go through all these steps, jump through all these hoops, and then still there wasn't a straight answer because it all depended. One thing we could do is simply, if anybody is going to even get a penny of the government money, which really they shouldn't, but if they are, then they should be required to post all their rates online so you can look up what it costs, so it is a known quantity, isn't some kind of mystical thing that the public never sees. We need to put the consumer back in decisions about costs. We need to have competing health plans. They're so restricted right now. That's why there's all this uniformity and all this bureaucracy. We need to have competing health plans that, for instance, could even offer consumers the chance to have reduced premiums based upon how they shop around and get better prices. And in that case, of course, they'd have to require that the institutions providing the care actually publicize their prices. So that's one thing. And finally, if people can't afford care, then that should be paid for by the states, not the federal government anyway.
Thank you, sir. Randy Heckman.
Thank you. You know, my sense is that even the Democrats wish that they had not voted for Obamacare. I really believe that.
I don't.
Well, I do, because even in this campaign, you don't hear Debbie Stabenow, who voted 2 times for Obamacare. She's not campaigning on this issue, and she won't. And the thousands of waivers that they have given to all their special friends out there and all their states, again, show that this thing is a major mistake. It needs to be, these are the words of my friend Gary Glenn. You know, Obamacare needs to be killed and taken off life support and a dagger put through its heart. That's a good line, Gary. I like that. That's good. But we still have issues with our healthcare system. And basically those are 3. One of those is that we have a system that, as a consumer, we go, typically if we have health insurance, we go to the doctor, we don't care how much it costs. Give me all you got. I don't care. We have a provider who gets paid. The more they get paid, the more they work, the more the services they give you, the more they get paid. So they keep giving you services. And third, we have these lawyers that are out there ready to sue those doctors. And so the doctors are always looking over their shoulders saying, we better do one more test, driving up prices. We need tort reform in a huge way.
Thank you, sir. Peter Kenichi.
Well, I know sometimes my wife and I, we watch TV, and we see these commercials 2 or 3 times during each TV show, and it says, you know, if you've taken this drug and you've had this side effect, call this lawyer's number, and you may be able to receive some financial compensation. So what we have to do, there's a lot of things we need to do, but one thing we need to do is first we have to get tort reform in, just as Randy was saying. But the big thing is, I don't really want to have the government go through and limit the amount of damages or whatever, because we have a jury system, and I really appreciate that. But what I'd love to do is see something like loser pays. Because if we have a loser pays scenario, anyone can still bring a lawsuit against any individual they think did them harm. But the way it's set up right now is the defense always pays the court costs. They always pay. Because the plaintiff's lawyer always receives a percentage of settlement, and the defense always has to pay their legal costs. So we have to have tort reform, and I would say loser pays. The other thing is the free market. The greatness of the free market is that it always fills any need in society. It always does. It's like a rule of nature. And if you get the government out of the healthcare business, the free market will take care of it. we're paying all this money anyways. The government's extracting it from our paycheck, we're paying it in insurance premium, and we're already paying all this money based on government mandates. If we simply got the government out of the situation, the free market would go through and, excuse me, I need a little help here. The free market will go through and it'll take care of any need. Like, you can have some people that want a full service policy just like they have now with no deductible. It'll be expensive, but it'll take care of the needs. Others could have a very, very high deductible policy, whatever they so chose. You have to make sure that people pay their own bills. If they pay their own bills, they're aware of what its cost is and they won't waste the services. So the free market will always take care of the situation, and we need to get government out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And the government official will be by in 3 to 4 months to look at your throat, so just hang tight.
What was that?
Bad joke. Gary Glenn.
Here's a radical proposal. How many of you want a United States Senator who will tell you the truth in public, whether the Republicans or the Democrats are to blame? Whether it's the bill signed into law in Massachusetts by Mitt Romney or the bill signed into law federally by Barack Obama, it is unconstitutional to force any American to buy something they don't want to buy, no matter who's responsible. Now bear with me a second. I ran the campaign in Idaho in the 1990s that passed a right-to-work law. If I go to the United States Senate, I'll support that there. As president of the American Family Association of Michigan, I co-authored with a law professor from Ave Maria University the Marriage Protection Amendment that says marriage is only between a man and a woman that Michigan voters approved. And 16 years ago, as a county commissioner, I authored the first medical savings account health care plan for county employees anywhere in America. And was asked to testify before Congress where the Chief of Staff of the Congressional Committee Chairman said I was a pioneer nationally in free market health care reform. Simply being people, the point I just simply want to make is I don't just talk about what I believe in, I've got a track record of action and leadership. We need to have medical savings accounts in the hands of as many Americans as possible. Dick Morris says in his book, Revolt, it's the solution to funding Medicaid. I'd support giving every federal employee one, and so arrange our tax structure as to incentivize as many tens of millions of Americans as possible to have one, saying that whatever you don't spend out of that medical savings account, you get to keep tax-free like a second IRA, so that now you care for the first time perhaps what they're charging you. As long as most Americans have the government or an insurance company paying for their health care and don't care what it costs, the price will keep going up. We need to restore cost consciousness on the part of the consumer and bring down the price of health care for all Americans.
Thank you, sir. That concludes, hold on to that mic. Actually, pass it to Mr. Durant over there. That concludes our question round. However, we do have interest in doing a lightning round. These are topics that the Tea Parties want all of you to respond to. They don't necessarily need a 30, 60, 90-second response, but in just 20 seconds or less, whatever's on your mind, go. It's more or less a litmus test. If you can just pass the microphone on along, and when it gets to the ends, just hold on to the mic. You were last in that round, you'll be first in the next round. So starting with you, sir. What is the #1 thing that you're going to do when you get in office?
The #1 thing is to reduce everybody's taxes and simultaneously repeal Obamacare and Dodd-Frank.
Thank you, sir. Scotty Bowman.
Well, being new there, my first thing I'll have an opportunity to do is vote no on lots of bad bills that will inevitably cross my desk.
Brady Heckman.
Again, Obamacare has to go ASAP. We have to cut the budget. The house that's on fire is our federal debt. Must cut it at all costs. Build coalitions with others to make it happen.
Peter Kenichi.
I would definitely work on balancing the federal budget without deficit spending. We have to go through and make sure that's balanced. It's immoral to saddle our kids with debt that we cannot pay.
Gary Glenn.
Well, the first thing I would do after my hand leaves that Bible, I'd no doubt, is lean over and kiss my wife.
Aww.
She's right there. And then say a prayer from the Lord for strength to help save my country, and then do everything in my power to simply uphold the oath that I have just taken to defend and abide by the Constitution of the United States.
Chuck Chuck Marino.
The very first thing I would do is go to the Oval Office and shake the president's hand because I know he's going to be a Republican.
All right, sir, if you can answer this one. Term limits. It's lightning round. That's the topic, whatever comes to mind.
I'm not for term limits. I know it's one of the ways that you can manage the Congress people, the president, and anybody else. But the problem is you really take it out of the people's hands. And I want the people to have a choice. I think what we have to do is get more involved in our government. I think we have to go out and make sure that we drag people to the polls to vote.
I urge you to go out to my table. I've got a handout specifically on this issue. U.S. Term Limits put out a news release praising me for having answered their survey. I pledged that I would support an amendment to limit congressional terms to 2 in the Senate, 4 in the House. I am in favor of term limits. And Clark, I need clarification on what you said on the radio today because it sounded like you weren't for term limits, so I want to hear some clarification.
I am not for term limits. I do not like career politicians, but I don't like having the federal government say who and who cannot run. The only solution we have is an educated electorate. That's the only solution. And I do not want the government saying someone like Justin Amash is not able to run because he's been there 2 terms. He's a great congressman.
I have changed my position on term limits. In principle, I'm against them because it puts a limit on the voter to elect, in some instances, the best qualified person in that district to continue to run. But after reading Jack Abramoff's book, Capital Punishment, and seeing the amount of money that Debbie Stabenow has raised, most of which it comes from outside the state of Michigan, I'm in favor of term limits now.
I signed on to exactly the same pledge that Gary Glenn was referring to, and they told me to get the press release out after Thanksgiving because I sent it in to them beforehand. I haven't seen it, but I'm definitely on the same page there. I might add, regarding the good people that are there, and you mentioned Justin Amash, I like him too. I'll talk about that later.
I believe, like George Washington, to self-limit. And I would only serve 2 terms, but I do not want the government telling me who can represent me. It's very easy to say, oh, let's limit because we have all these bad politicians. The reason we have bad politicians representing us is because of us. And, now just listen. And because the incumbents, wait just a second, the incumbents have set up rules that do not allow all of these individuals to raise the funds that they need to get their message out. It's the politicians who have limited the ability of every person on this stage to be able to take on Debbie Stabenow. Those are the restrictions that should go.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, as a reminder, you do have 2 minutes of a closing remark, so if there's something that's really burning, please reserve that until your 2-minute time. Starting with you, Mr. Durant. Sharia law.
There's my answer. American law in American courts, the United States Constitution is the law of the land.
I fully support the right to freedom of religion as defined in the Constitution. To tell people they cannot practice Sharia law, what's that? Force feed them pork? Require them to commit adultery? That's part of Sharia law. As long as their practice of the religion does not violate the rights of their neighbor, people should be able to practice this as much as they can. As far as some other notion, I don't know where that exists. It's a weird hypothetical that the government would actually enforce that anywhere in this country.
My good friend, State Representative Dave Ajema, is the author of the bill that would have American law for American courts. Dave has endorsed my candidacy. He's a good friend. And I totally support that concept, that it is totally inconsistent with our Constitution for Sharia law to be used in this country.
I totally agree. The U.S. Constitution is the law of the land, and that's the only law that should be used in U.S. courts.